So imagine walking into a clinic with like a total mystery illness.
Right, the kind that has just baffled specialists for a decade.
Exactly. You've been on this complete diagnostic odyssey, bouncing from department to department, doing countless tests and still zero answers.
It's exhausting just thinking about it,
It really is. But then you walk out 20 minutes later with a precise diagnosis and a targeted treatment plan.
which sounds completely impossible.
I know, it sounds like science fiction, but this doesn't happen because you finally found like a lone genius doctor. It happens because an algorithm instantly read some buried footnote in a forgotten medical journal from 1998, cross-referenced it with the subtle joint pain you mentioned in passing, and just solved the puzzle in seconds.
Yeah, and that is exactly why we're here today.
Welcome to today's deep dive. For you, the curious learner who wants the signal without the noise, our mission today is to unpack an AI News Daily Digest from June 17th, 2026.
And we really aren't just looking at generic software updates today.
No, definitely not. We are looking at this profound tipping point where artificial intelligence stops being, just a tool in a laboratory. It's becoming a deeply intimate participant in the human experience.
Yeah, the sources from today's digest illustrate this fundamental crossing of the threshold. We are tracking AI as it actively maps the architecture of our physical bodies, the nuances of our mental health, the complex chaos of our global climate, and even the subjective realm of our cultural storytelling.
It's a lot.
It is. It is a moment where the sheer processing power of machine learning is being applied to the most vulnerable aspects of human life.
Okay, so let's jump right into that first boundary, the physical self. The digest highlights this massive breakthrough from a leading university about diagnosing rare diseases.
Which is a huge deal.
Huge. For anyone who hasn't experienced it, rare diseases are basically a statistical nightmare for the medical field. I mean, a doctor can practice for 40 years and never see a single case of a specific genetic anomaly.
Right, the human brain just can't hold that much obscure data.
Exactly. But this new AI system uses natural language processing to analyze patients' symptoms against just massive databases of medical literature.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second, because I want to bypass the whole magic trick element of this.
Yeah, let's get into the mechanics.
How does an AI using natural language processing actually, understand the nuance of a patient's physical symptoms better than a human doctor's intuition? It's not actually intuition, right?
No. What's fascinating here is it's about turning language into mathematics. That is the core mechanism. Natural language processing, or NLP, it doesn't read a medical chart the way you or I read a book.
Okay.
It relies on a process called vectorization. So when the AI scans millions of pages of medical literature, and we are talking about decades of case studies, clinical trial results, pharmaceutical data, it assigns a mathematical value, a vector, to every single medical term.
Wait, so every symptom, every biological process gets a number?
Basically, yes.
Hmm.
It essentially plots every medical concept in human history on an unimaginably vast multidimensional map. Oh, wow. So it's like having an immortal super doctor who has instantly memorized every medical textbook and patient file in history.
Exactly.
So if a patient presents with a highly specific, bizarre constellation of symptoms, let's say a minor neurological echet combined with a highly unusual rash,
Right.
the human doctor is forced to rely on their biological hard drive. They have to search their own memory of the few hundred papers they've read recently or the patients they've seen in the last decade.
Which is incredibly limited. But the AI is looking at the spatial relationship between those mathematical vectors.
Yeah.
It measures the distance between the vector for that specific and the vector for that rash across 30 million medical documents simultaneously.
30 million, that's just wild.
It is. It finds the microscopic, needle-in-a-haystack connections in the data. A human brain simply cannot compute that topology. The AI is solving mysteries that leave humans stumped, not because it is smarter or more intuitive, but because it operates on a scale of pattern recognition that bypasses human memory and time entirely.
And the real-world impact here is staggering. Shortening diagnosis times from years to minutes directly alters patient outcomes. You eliminate a decade of the wrong treatments, the wrong medications, and, the compounding healthcare costs.
It completely changes the game.
But this brings up a really fascinating conceptual bridge. If we are using this technology to bypass the limitations of a doctor's biological memory, what happens when we apply that exact same mechanism to a doctor's availability?
Yeah, that naturally leads us to the inner self and the next major development in the digest.
Right.
If AI can map the physical complexities of the body through clinical data, the natural next step is mapping the complexities of the mind. So we're moving from physical health to mental wellness.
Which is a huge leap.
It is. The digest covers this innovative startup launching an AI-driven mental health app. It uses machine learning to adapt its therapeutic interventions in real time based entirely on the user's interaction patterns.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, and I have to push back a little here.
Go for it.
Because a lot of people immediately bristle at the idea of algorithmic therapy. The instinctive reaction is, can an algorithm actually offer genuine support, or is this just an incredibly complex if-then flowchart for human emotion? Doesn't therapy fundamentally require human empathy?
That is the big question. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the value here isn't in perfectly replicating human empathy. It's about removing the massive barriers to entry for therapy.
You mean the friction of just getting an appointment?
Exactly. The barriers to traditional mental health care are astronomical for the average person. You have restrictive insurance networks, wait lists that stretch for 6 months.
The out-of-pocket costs alone are crazy.
Right, and the lingering social stigma of actually walking into a therapist's office. This AI application circumvents every single one of those hurdles. It provides immediate, adaptable, and scalable support when human therapists aren't accessible.
And it does this by analyzing the user's input like text or voice to detect pacing, vocabulary shifts, sentiment.
Yes, it's adapting its methodology on the fly. Say the machine learning model detects through your text inputs that you're spiraling into an acute anxiety attack at like 3:00 a.m.
Right.
It isn't going to offer you a deep psychoanalytic dive into your childhood trauma right then. It pivots instantly to grounding exercises.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. Conversely, if it tracks your baseline over 3 weeks and sees a depressive trend, it leans into cognitive behavioral frameworks to challenge those negative thought patterns.
So the machine learning model builds a dynamic baseline of your emotional state. It's not trying to mimic empathy. It's providing highly customized utility.
Exactly. It's catching the individuals who are completely falling through the cracks of the traditional healthcare system. The algorithm is essentially saying, I am not a human therapist, but I am here right now in your pocket, and the human therapist isn't.
It's the democratization of access. We've seen how AI solves problems where human memory falls short in the clinic and where human availability falls short in therapy. Now, I want to take that exact same pattern recognition power and apply it to a problem that is so vast, so incredibly chaotic, that human intuition isn't just insufficient, it's entirely useless. Let's zoom out to the macro scale.
To the planet itself.
Exactly. The Digest details this major initiative from a consortium of tech companies and environmental organizations. They've unveiled a massive new AI model specifically designed for climate change mitigation.
Right, and this is where it gets really impactful on a global scale.
It processes continuous streams of satellite imagery and localized environmental data to accurately forecast extreme events. We're talking hurricanes, multi-year droughts, and with unprecedented accuracy.
Which helps governments and organizations with resource allocation and disaster preparedness.
Okay, so we are essentially upgrading from a local weather app to a global predictive crystal ball. But what does this all mean for the people on the ground? How does knowing a drought is coming actually change the outcome?
Well, to understand that, we have to look at why this is different from traditional forecasting. Traditional meteorological models are physics-based. They use massive supercomputers to try and simulate the fluid dynamics of the atmosphere.
Like calculating how every single parcel of air and water interacts.
Exactly. But the atmosphere of a warming planet is becoming too chaotic for those traditional equations. The physics-based simulations start to break down because the variables change too rapidly.
So how does the AI do it differently?
It doesn't try to simulate the physics. Instead, it digests an unfathomable amount of visual data from satellites. It tracks minute historical changes in ocean surface temperatures, the density of cloud formations, deep soil moisture levels.
Oh, so it's looking for statistical patterns leading up to an event.
Yes. Think of it like, actually it reminds me of a chess grandmaster.
Yes, exactly. A grandmaster isn't calculating the physical weight of the wooden pieces on the board. They are looking at the pattern of the pieces and calculating 15 moves ahead based on historical games. So the AI is looking at Earth's data and recognizing the opening moves of a devastating drought long before the sky even clears.
That's a perfect analogy. And the synthesis of all this is that prediction equals preparation. By forecasting these climate impacts probabilistically, the lead time increases dramatically.
Right.
If governments know a severe drought is going to hit a specific agricultural region with 90% certainty 3 months in advance, The entire paradigm shifts.
You're no longer reacting by airdropping emergency water after the crops have died. You are rerouting supply chains, adjusting water rationing, moving the food before the crisis actually peaks.
Exactly. It shifts AI from being a commercial tool to a vital humanitarian infrastructure. It becomes a force for good, tackling our most pressing global challenge.
Okay, so we have tracked AI diagnosing the physical body, supporting the inner mind, and predicting the physical environment.
Right. And all of those applications rely on absolute rules.
Right.
Biology, psychology, physics, they all have underlying metrics and hard data.
What?
But here is the philosophical pivot. What happens when this highly logical, pattern-seeking technology enters the purely subjective, uniquely human realm of art and imagination?
Oh, man. The cultural impact section of this digest completely stops you in your tracks.
Oh.
We are moving from global climate predictions straight into the Hollywood writer's room.
It's a huge shift.
A leading film studio announced they are officially integrating AI into their scriptwriting process. The algorithm analyzes successful movies to predict audience preferences.
And as you can imagine, this forces a major confrontation between art and algorithm.
Yeah, purists argue this lacks the human touch, while the studio insists the AI just provides data-driven insights to complement and enhance traditional storytelling.
Basically acting as an incredibly well-read script doctor. The machine learning models are trained on the historical data of cinema. They analyze the specific act break timing of a thriller, the sentiment peaks and valleys of a romantic comedy.
The exact dialogue structures that keep you from pausing the movie.
Right. It's attempting to mathematically quantify the magic of a movie.
But, okay, I have to challenge this directly. If an AI is only analyzing past successful movies to write future movies, doesn't that guarantee we're just going to get recycled, formulaic blockbusters? How can data predict original human creativity?
This raises an important question, and it's the exact limitation of the technology. If a piece of art is truly original, it breaks the established formula. It introduces friction.
Right.
An AI trained solely on historical box office successes might scan a brilliantly unconventional script and flag it as a likely failure, simply because its narrative geometry doesn't match the dataset.
It optimizes out the friction, but the friction is what makes the art memorable.
Exactly. The studio views the AI as a tool, much like a paintbrush, to streamline pacing. But you have to think critically, is it a tool, or is it a crutch that limits true artistic risk?
We're basically asking the machine to focus group our storytelling before the story is even written. Do we want guaranteed, frictionless entertainment, or do we want the messy vulnerability of a human writer taking a massive risk?
It is a profound tension, and it perfectly illuminates the common denominator beneath every single development we've talked about today.
Which brings us to the ethical foundation of this entire technological shift. Because whether AI is reading our medical charts, tracking our therapy texts, mapping our environment, or predicting our favorite movies, it requires raw material.
It requires unimaginable mountains of data.
You cannot have the immortal super doctor, the omnipresent therapist, or the chess grandmaster of climate without feeding the machine an endless diet of human information.
And that's why the digest highlights the intense calls from experts for stricter regulations, focusing heavily on data privacy and algorithmic bias.
It's the ultimate trade-off, isn't it? I mean, how do we as a society balance the incredible life-saving benefits we just talked about, like curing rare diseases and surviving hurricanes, with the reality that we have to surrender our most private data to make it work?
That is the core issue. The architecture of AI is entirely dependent on the data it consumes. We are looking at a classic societal trade-off. Without transparency and regulation, the intimacy of this technology becomes a massive vulnerability.
And the bias aspect is just as critical. We touched on this with the scriptwriting AI, this concept of data determinism. If you only train a system on the past, it can only recreate the past.
Right. The bias becomes mathematically codified. If a medical AI is trained primarily on clinical data from one specific demographic, its diagnostic power will quietly inherit that blind spot.
The algorithm doesn't have prejudice, it just has the data we give it.
Exactly. The same applies to the mental health app. If the sentiment analysis model is trained on specific cultural expressions of anxiety, it might completely misinterpret the distress signals of a user from a different background.
So if our historical data is flawed, the machine's flawless logic will produce a flawed outcome.
Which is why knowledge is only valuable when applied responsibly. Without transparency and regulation, algorithmic bias could quietly compromise our healthcare or manipulate our media. Ethical vigilance is really the most important tech development of all here.
We have covered a massive expanse of territory today, from the micro level of NLP translating the human body into math to cure rare diseases, to AI creating an accessible mental health safety net.
Right.
We zoomed out to the macro level, looking at how AI models manage the chaos of climate change to protect us. We ventured into the writer's room to debate algorithmic optimization versus raw human creativity, and we grounded it all in the absolute necessity of ethical safeguards.
It's a comprehensive look at a society in the midst of a profound transition. And as we conclude today's deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to consider based on today's sources.
Let's hear it.
We've seen today how AI learns entirely from our past medical records, our past climate data, our past movies. If AI is fundamentally a mirror, reflecting the data of our past, how do we actively ensure that it helps us build a new and better future rather than just perfectly recreating the world we already have?
Man, that is an incredible concept to mull over. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. It is always a privilege to unpack these complex mechanisms and massive ideas with you. As you navigate the ever-evolving landscape of technology, keep looking beneath the surface. Question the data driving the systems around you. Stay curious and stay informed. We'll catch you next time.